Itching to get away this summer? You're not alone. About 6 in 10 Americans are planning to take a trip this season. That's a big jump compared to last summer and the summer before that. As the pandemic evolves more into an endemic, more people are traveling throughout the U.S. and abroad. Looking at international travel in particular, about 20% of Americans are preparing to head overseas in coming months. But where are people going? One popular destination is Europe, whether that means jetting off to France, Italy, Spain, or somewhere else in the continent. You can't go wrong by relaxing on the other side of the Atlantic.
I'm seeing a lot of crowds in Europe, and it's not even peak season yet. I mean, people are traveling with a vengeance. The restaurants are jammed. It's the first time in my life, in my career, that I've been recommending making reservations in advance for a restaurant meal if you really care about that particular evening meal.
That's longtime tour guide, travel writer, and PBS TV show host Rick Steves. He just got back from traveling across Europe for 6 weeks. His advice? Be prepared for crowds back out in full force.
It's really exciting to be able to be helping Americans understand what's the story for European travel right now. And the main thing is the energy is there. Europe is back as far as, if you like the Paseo in Madrid and strolling with the parade of people, it's happening. If you like the Passeggiata in Florence and licking your gelato and being out with everybody making the scene, it's happening. If you like sipping whiskey with a new friend in a pub in Edinburgh, it's happening. If you want to clink glasses in a beer hall in Munich, it's happening. If you want to sit in a cafe in Paris with your wine and your escargot and watch the people stroll by, it's there. I'm just so kind of excited that Europe is back and people are back out on the streets and the restaurants are thriving.
Steves is best known for his in-depth knowledge and recommendations on how to best travel in Europe. This can mean backpacking through several countries or focusing on one region or country. For decades now, his mantra has been to take the road less traveled. His take is to stray away from the trendy tourist destinations and standard tours where you see the common sights from the seat of a bus. Instead, frequent the smaller cities and towns, the more authentic restaurants, and the lesser-known attractions. Before heading to Europe himself this year after a hiatus, Steves recounts being nervous that some of his favorite places would be gone.
Thankfully, those are the ones that did survive the pandemic. And I was worried I was going to be raking away the corpses of a lot of dead businesses as I updated my guidebooks. But no, they're still alive and well, and they're eager and they're energized. During COVID, they had a tough time and they had to trim their sales and cut their staffs down, but they got government funding, they got local patronage, and they've got a passion to stay in business. And now international travel is picking up, and they're spreading their wings, and there's that great energy. So that was really good news for me.
While higher prices right now, from flights to hotels, are a deterrent to some, it's still possible to travel on a budget. In general, most Americans have traveled abroad at one point or another. About 70% of U.S. adults have vacationed internationally at some point in their lives, according to a 2021 Pew Research Center survey. For those planning their next international journey, Steve says it's important to make reservations if you want to save money and time during peak summer season.
Museums these days they're moderating the crowd, so they don't want so many people in at the same time from a safety point of view, and consequently, they don't want people lining up to get in, so they're requiring that you make reservations in advance. I think that's a good thing. Some of us are less inclined to go online and make a reservation and pay for something in advance, but get used to it. That's part of travel going forward. One thing I did as I was researching my guidebooks, whether it was Athens or Florence or Vienna or Amsterdam or London, is every time I updated a chapter, I would have a little sidebar at the beginning saying, okay, you're going to Amsterdam. What do you need to do in advance? Well, if you want to see Anne Frank, if you want to see the Van Goghs, if you want to go to the Rijksmuseum and see Rembrandt, you need to make a reservation. If you want to go to a fancy restaurant and have a great evening out, you need to make a reservation for that. Everything else is wide open. And, that's the good news. What do you need to make a reservation for in advance online, and what is wide open? You don't need to go overboard on this reserve in advance concerns, but you got to know if you're going to Florence and you want to see David, or if you want to go to the Uffizi Gallery, you need to make a reservation. If you're going to Athens, or if you're going to Rome and you want to see the Sistine Chapel and you want to see the Colosseum and you want to see the Forum, you need to make a reservation.
And if you don't want to bother with reservations when in Europe, Steve says that's fine too. You can equally enjoy wherever you are by heading to other, lesser-known attractions and eateries nearby.
By our nature, we all go to the same places. We all want to pack into Anne Frank's house. Why? Well, she's famous. We read the book. A 10-minute walk away, there's a better experience for the Holocaust. It's the Dutch Resistance Museum, and nobody's there. It's just wide open. So you got to realize there are good options. And if you want to go to the famous places, you can, but you'll want to make a reservation in advance.
He also recommends that if you have some flexibility on when to travel to Europe, opt to visit during autumn or spring instead of summer. This year especially, crowds are at a record high, and specific cities will be jam-packed.
Barcelona, Amsterdam, Florence, Venice, Salzburg, lots of crowds. And I'm not saying don't go there, but if you can go there off season, or if you do go there, be out early, be out late, there's alternatives to those places. One thing I've been tuned into lately is the beauty of what I call second cities. Everybody goes to Edinburgh. What about Glasgow? Everybody goes to Dublin. What about Belfast? Everybody goes to Paris. What about Marseille? Everybody goes to Lisbon. What about Porto? You know, you want to do Lisbon, you want to do Paris, but spend some time in the second cities. And that's where you'll find places that they were sort of industrial wastelands for a while. I mean, Rust Belt cities. And then they've really dived back into the fray, and they've been so energized in the last decade. And today you'll find wonderful restaurants, wonderful little shops, a wonderful street art scene, a wonderful vibrancy in these second cities that are coming into their own.
Along with visiting unique places, try also roaming a bit differently than you're used to. Instead of hopping on a tour bus, take a walking tour or rent some bicycles. Steve's recommends being a cultural chameleon in some senses. Change with what's customary in the town or city you're in.
When I cross a border, I change. All of a sudden, I was just in a red wine country. Now I'm in a great beer country. When I'm in Prague, I never have a wine. I always have a Pilsner. When I'm in Belgium, I don't have a light beer. I have a heavy beer, a monk-made milkshakey beer. When I'm in Germany, I have white wine. When I'm in Tuscany, I have red wine. When I'm in Scotland, I have whiskey. And when I'm in Greece, I have a nice cloudy glass of ouzo. I'm like a chameleon. I change wherever I go. And when you change and you become a temporary local, you're consuming local. And that local glass of whatever you want to drink is so much better. It's better style. You'll make more friends. You'll encounter more smiles, and you'll save a lot of money than if you insist on ordering something that's more international or not what the locals are drinking.
This mindset extends past beverages and into experiences as well.
Going to a soccer game is really fun. Going to the sauna in Finland or going to the hammam and the bath in Turkey, that's the experience. Those are the things that you remember. And ironically, a lot of those experiences are very inexpensive because it's what the locals do, and the tourists are all at the fancy tourist places.
In the end, it's all about going with the flow and being open to new experiences. Who knows what you'll see and who you'll meet? It's never too early to start thinking about your next adventure. To learn more about Rick Steves and how to travel across Europe, visit ricksteves.com. That's RickSteves.com. For more information on all of our guests and past stories, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson. Coming up next week.
You have this wonderful opportunity to lose yourself in a creative analog task and to really focus on something and let the outside world just melt away.
Think coloring is just for kids? Think again. Then,
it's not uncommon to have kids on the beach find cigarette butts in the sand. And in fact, there's been some cases of kids consuming them, many cases actually, and having nicotine toxicity.
The many dangers of dumped cigarettes. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org.
Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.